What happens when a powerful man, used to winning at everything, takes on a cruel challenge to marry a woman he doesn't love for money? What he never expected was that she knew all along. This is not just a love story. It's a story about revenge, resilience, and redemption. About how one woman turned pain into power, and how one man had to lose everything to finally understand love. If you've ever believed that people can change, or if you've ever wished someone would finally face the consequences of their cruelty, this story will break your heart and then rebuild it. Viewer warning: this story will make you feel things. Rage, hope, maybe even tears. Stay to the end for a twist that will hit you where it hurts most and where it heals. Subscribe for more real, emotional, life-changing stories that remind us what truly matters. Let the story begin. Lucas Marshall had always believed he could conquer anything. In boardrooms, negotiations, even in love, his self-assured smile and tailor-made suits spoke volumes. He was a millionaire. Not just rich, but confident, almost dangerously sure of himself. He thrived on challenges. That night, at a lavish New York gala drenched in crystal chandeliers and whispers of power deals, his life was about to be hooked by a challenge he would never see coming. Picture this: champagne flutes catching the golden light, laughter rolling like soft thunder, and among it, Jack Lucas's closest friend leaned in, eyes alight with mischief. He threw out the words that would shatter Lucas's world. "I bet you wouldn't have the guts to marry a woman below your usual type." And just like that, a simple dinner party risk transformed into something dangerous, something personal. Lucas raised an eyebrow. He was drawn not because he cared what type of woman Jack meant, but because to lose was unthinkable. "What's the prize?" he asked, voice steady, but his pulse had just started racing. Jack's grin widened. $1 million. But you have to marry her, and stay married for 6 months. $1 million easily outweighed any emotional cost Lucas felt in that moment. He agreed, almost reflexively, because in his world, money equals power, and power means victory. But Jack's challenge wasn't only about that. It was about pride, and Lucas never lost. Yet there was something unnervingly different about this bet. It wasn't a business deal or hostile acquisition. It was a marriage, a life. Lucas had never made decisions that deep based on winning. Still, the thrill of proving himself stronger than his own doubts, stronger than expectations, was too powerful to resist. He shook Jack's hand, sealing the wager, hardly looking back. Only later did he learn the rules. The woman Jack had in mind, Chloe Richards. Lucas didn't know her personally. She wasn't a name in high society, a beauty featured in life and style columns, or someone handing her image out for public consumption. She didn't fit Lucas's precise checklist, nor the glossy Instagram filters he was accustomed to. She was, by his calculation, a safe win. But Lucas was underestimating the heart beneath that exterior and underestimating the complexity of what real worth meant. Days passed, and Lucas coolly reviewed the details. Chloe was confident, fiercely independent, and had a spine where most women he'd known had been pliable. She wasn't impressed by his wealth, if she even knew about it. There was something about that defiance that both unnerved and intrigued him. It wasn't part of the game he thought he was playing. The more Lucas learned about Chloe, the more he felt caught without realizing she was already playing her own game. Then came their first encounter. A stunning, dimly lit restaurant, tucked away yet undeniably elegant. Lucas arrived expecting someone meek, perhaps startled by the grandeur. But Chloe walked in with head held high, no trembling, no hesitation. She met him directly in the eyes, offering a handshake that had strength, not shyness. "You must be Lucas Marshall," she stated. Voice calm but fierce. Lucas replied with a practiced smile and a courteous nod. "And you are Chloe Richards." There was a flicker in the way she looked at him, not in admiration, but with something like recognition of a battlefield. She didn't sit in the shadows or nod politely. Instead, she unsettled him by her plain honesty. Without hesitation, she spoke the words Lucas hadn't expected. "I know why we're here. I know about the bet silence." The words hung between them, shifting the air. Lucas, unruffled outwardly, felt a ripple inside. He asked, voice poised, "And you still agreed to meet?" Chloe didn't hesitate. "I have my reasons," she said simply. 6 months is short, but a lot can change." Then came the unflinching finality. "If you think you can manipulate me, you're mistaken." In that moment, Lucas realized something. He wasn't dealing with a beautiful accessory, someone who'd bend. He was dealing with a force of nature, someone who wouldn't yield. His world of winning suddenly felt uncertain. This wasn't a bet he was certain to win anymore, not in any way he'd expected. Lucas Marshall had dined with actresses, models, even foreign princesses. He'd flown halfway across the world for coffee dates on yachts, and he was used to being admired, if not outright adored. But nothing could have prepared him for Chloe Richards. Their first meeting wasn't just unusual, it was disarming. The restaurant was flawless. Golden chandeliers reflected in polished marble floors. Waiters floated like ghosts. Every surface gleamed. Lucas arrived early, as always, choosing a corner table with the best view. He sat with the confidence of a man used to control, sipping a neat scotch, waiting for his bet to walk through the door. And then, she entered. Not shy, not uncertain. She wasn't dressed to impress him. No tight dress, no excessive makeup, no designer bag. Chloe wore a simple, dark outfit that hugged her curves comfortably, her hair tied back, her eyes focused. Her presence didn't demand attention, it commanded it. Lucas blinked, barely concealing his surprise. She wasn't trying to charm him. In fact, she looked right through the restaurant's luxury, as if she'd seen it all before, or didn't care. She reached the table, extended a hand, and said calmly, "You must be Lucas Marshall." Lucas stood, smiled with his signature charm, and took her hand. Her grip was firm, stronger than he expected. No hesitation, no need to impress, no fear. "You must be Chloe Richards," he replied smoothly, masking his curiosity behind practiced confidence. Then came the moment that cracked his foundation. Chloe didn't waste time. As soon as the waiter left, she leaned forward slightly and said, "Let's not pretend." "I know about the bet." Lucas froze for just a heartbeat. His mind raced. Who told her? Jack wouldn't, or maybe he would. Regardless, she knew. Still, he kept his smile, tilting his head as if amused. "And yet you still came," he said, careful with his tone. Chloe nodded. Her eyes didn't waver. "Let's just say I have my reasons." That answer did something to Lucas. It unsettled him, not because she had agreed, but because she wasn't playing the game the way he'd planned. There was no bargaining, no asking for clarification, no attempt to get more from the deal. She already knew the terms, and accepted them. 6 months may seem short, Chloe continued, her voice steady. But a lot can change in that time. If you think you can manipulate or control me, Lucas, you're mistaken. Lucas stared at her, unsure whether to laugh or lean in. He was used to controlling conversations. He was used to people reacting. But Chloe didn't react. She dictated. There was something magnetic about her calmness, something unshakable. He didn't hear desperation in her voice, he heard purpose. And Lucas, for the first time in a long while, felt like he might not be the one holding the cards. As the meal went on, he tried to shift the tone. Casual, flirty, perhaps even charming. He complimented her confidence. She ignored it. He asked about her interests. She answered directly, without elaboration. When he tried to steer the conversation toward luxury, she responded with neutral curiosity, but no enthusiasm. She didn't challenge his wealth, she simply made it irrelevant. By dessert, Lucas wasn't thinking about winning the bet. He was thinking about how strangely refreshing it was to meet someone who didn't want anything from him. And that thought of not being needed for his money, his power, or his name was both foreign and thrilling. But he couldn't shake the feeling that Chloe was hiding something. Her reasons for agreeing, were they personal? Revenge? A challenge of her own? Lucas couldn't tell, and that made him more curious than ever. After dinner, as he walked her to the car, Lucas opened the door like a gentleman. Chloe paused, looked at him, and said, 6 months. Nothing more. Let's keep it clean. Lucas smiled, not a charming smile this time, but one of fascination. Agreed. She got into the car without another word, and as it drove off into the glowing streets of New York, Lucas stood there, watching her disappear. He didn't realize it yet, but the game had already changed. This wasn't going to be a story of dominance or seduction. This wasn't about bending someone to his will. Chloe Richards wasn't just different. She was playing on a level Lucas didn't understand yet. And for the first time in years, Lucas Marshall wasn't sure if he was the hunter or the prey. It had been only a few days since their dinner, but Lucas couldn't get Chloe out of his mind. Not because she was stunning, though she had a unique beauty, but because she was unreadable. A woman like her didn't fit into any category he was used to. She didn't flirt. She didn't flatter. She didn't fall. She negotiated. And Lucas Marshall, who had built an empire by out-negotiating everyone, suddenly felt like he was playing catch-up. Their second meeting was Chloe's suggestion. A quaint little cafe tucked in the quieter part of the city. No valet, no chandeliers, no exclusive reservations, just mismatched chairs, exposed brick walls, and the scent of fresh tea leaves and pastries in the air. It was so unremarkable, and that made it remarkable to Lucas. He arrived 5 minutes late, unusual for him. He thought it would give him a small upper hand, but when he stepped inside, Chloe was already there, calmly sipping her tea as if she owned the place. She looked up, smiled. Not the kind of smile that welcomed him, but one that seemed to say, "You're late." "I'm not surprised. I thought you preferred 5-star dining," Chloe teased gently as he sat down. "Sometimes," Lucas replied, trying to sound casual. "It's good to break routine." They exchanged pleasantries, but Chloe didn't linger in the small talk. She was here for something else. "If we're really going through with this," she said, setting down her cup with care, "then I want a few things to be very clear." Lucas raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "I'm not interested in your money," she began, her tone even and unapologetic. "Not your lifestyle. Not your name. I'm not here to become Mrs. Marshall. I'm here for 6 months. That's it. After that, we go our separate ways, just like we agreed." Lucas nodded slowly, watching her with a new level of attention. She wasn't bluffing. There was no hidden angle. Or if there was, it wasn't greed. And during those 6 months, she added, I live life my way. I keep my job. I keep my friends. You don't interfere. Lucas tilted his head, slightly amused. You make it sound like I'm the villain in this. Chloe didn't smile. You're a man who likes control, Lucas. But I won't be one of your conquests. If that's what you're expecting, if that's what this bet is to you, you'll be disappointed. That hit a nerve. Lucas had walked into this expecting to dictate terms. Win the challenge, collect the prize. But now it felt like the rules had shifted, and she was the one writing them. So what do you want out of this, Chloe? He asked, genuinely curious. Freedom, she answered without hesitation. Freedom to walk away when this is over. Freedom to be myself without being reshaped into someone who fits your world. I agreed to the terms, but that doesn't mean I agreed to play by your expectations. Lucas exhaled slowly. For the first time, he realized this wasn't going to be a simple 6-month contract. This was going to be something else entirely. Still, he smirked. You're not afraid of me, are you? No, she replied. Should I be? That response made something flicker in him. Not offense, not pride, respect. She had more strength in one conversation than many of the executives he'd brought to their knees in boardrooms. And she wasn't trying to prove anything. She just was. They finished their drinks in near silence. Not uncomfortable, just thoughtful. As they parted ways, Lucas extended his hand. This time she took it without hesitation. Her grip was the same, firm, steady, intentional. No surprises? He asked lightly. There will always be surprises, she replied. But not the kind you're expecting. She turned and walked away, leaving Lucas at the cafe door, his hands in his pockets, staring at the sidewalk like it might whisper a hint about who she really was. She had given him everything he needed to know. But somehow, he felt like he knew nothing at all. The wedding came quicker than expected. There were no grand vows, no cathedral ceilings, no string quartet playing love songs. Just a legal document, a sterile courthouse, and 2 signatures that turned a bold bet into a binding agreement. Lucas wore a tailored suit, like he was closing a business deal. Chloe wore a simple cream dress, her hair tied back, no veil, no bouquet. To anyone watching, they looked like strangers fulfilling an obligation. And that's exactly what they were. Lucas didn't care. He'd played his part, married her. The countdown had begun. 6 months until he walked away with $1 million and hopefully his pride intact. But as they left the courthouse and stepped into the waiting car, something strange happened. Chloe didn't look nervous. She didn't even look at him. She stared straight ahead, like she was already somewhere else. Mentally, emotionally, maybe even spiritually. Lucas told himself it didn't matter. He had a plan. It started with the penthouse. When the elevator opened to the top floor of the towering glass building in the heart of Manhattan, Chloe stepped out and was immediately met with a panoramic view of the city. Floor-to-ceiling windows wrapped around the space, offering breathtaking views of the skyline. Every inch of the penthouse screamed excess Italian marble, designer furniture, rare art pieces, everything polished to perfection. Lucas watched her closely, expecting a flicker of awe. But Chloe didn't even blink. She walked slowly across the room, stopping by one of the massive windows. Her voice was calm, almost indifferent. 6 months, Lucas, eh? Not a day more. He smiled, not out of joy, but habit. He was used to people trying to assert control. used to resistance that eventually gave way. He had seen it before, time and again. Everyone had a price, a weakness, a soft spot. Chloe, he told himself, would be no different. In the days that followed, Lucas deployed his usual weapons: luxury, indulgence, comfort. He sent stylists to her room, gifted her with designer clothes, shoes that cost more than most people's rent, and jewelry that sparkled under the city lights. She thanked him politely, but never wore any of it. He booked weekend getaways to exclusive resorts. She declined. He invited her to galas, events, charity auctions filled with the city's elite. She attended too and left early both times. Chloe lived simply. She brewed her own coffee. She cooked her own food. She read books late into the night and listened to jazz on a small speaker she brought from her old apartment. She made the penthouse feel like hers, not by decorating it, but by refusing to be consumed by it. That unsettled Lucas more than he was willing to admit. He had never met someone so immune. Money didn't sway her. Luxury didn't impress her. Status didn't move her. She wasn't just rejecting his world, she was uninterested in it. And Lucas, used to being the center of gravity, felt something he hadn't felt in years: irrelevance. His frustration began to morph into something darker. He told himself it was strategy when he suggested she didn't need to work anymore. "You don't need a paycheck," he said, trying to sound generous. "You're my wife now." Chloe's eyes narrowed, but she said nothing. She simply kept going to work, refusing to let his wealth define her. When that didn't work, Lucas started making her wait. He rearranged schedules so she'd miss meetings. He accidentally forgot to pass along messages. He used silence as leverage. But Chloe didn't flinch. She adjusted. She adapted. She never raised her voice. And that drove Lucas insane. He began to see their marriage not as a deal, but as a game he was losing. Not because she was fighting harder, but because she refused to play the game at all. One night, frustrated by her calm, Lucas cornered her in the living room. "I don't understand you," he said, his voice tinged with something between anger and curiosity. "Any other woman would be thrilled to live this life. But you act like none of it matters." Chloe looked up from the book she was reading. Her eyes didn't hold anger, but they did hold clarity. "It doesn't," she replied. "Not to me." Lucas stared at her, stunned. And for the first time the thought entered his mind, not as a whisper, but as a warning. He wasn't in control anymore. The penthouse, once Lucas's symbol of dominance, was beginning to feel like a cage, not for Chloe, but for him. He had tried everything: luxuries, manipulation, charm, silence. Yet none of it worked. Chloe moved through his world with quiet defiance. She didn't argue. She didn't rebel. She simply existed in a way that made Lucas feel like a ghost in his own home. And that terrified him. For weeks, he had underestimated her, thought she'd break, thought she'd bend, thought she'd eventually become like the others, willing to trade freedom for diamonds, self-worth for status. But Chloe never flinched. Lucas began pushing harder. He rearranged her work schedule behind her back, hoping she'd give up and stay home. He accidentally canceled meetings she had spent weeks organizing. When she brought it up, he shrugged it off like it was a simple mistake. But Chloe knew. And still, she didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply said, "I see what you're doing. And it won't work." That infuriated Lucas more than if she had yelled. Their arguments weren't loud, but they were sharp like knives hidden in velvet. One night, after yet another failed attempt to win her over with a lavish dinner and a bracelet that cost more than most people made in a year, Lucas lost his composure. "Why do you keep resisting this?" he snapped. "I've given you everything." Most women would kill for this life. Chloe looked at him, her gaze steady. "You think giving someone things is the same as giving them value?" Lucas opened his mouth, but no words came out. She stood slowly. Her voice was calm, but powerful. "What do I want?" "I want respect, Lucas. I want you to stop seeing people as chess pieces. I want you to understand that money doesn't buy dignity. It doesn't erase what you've done to people along the way." Her words hit like a hammer, and for the first time, Lucas felt something crack not outside, but inside. There was a silence, heavy and suffocating. Then Chloe said something that made the air freeze. "You still don't get it, do you?" Lucas stared, confused. This was never about your money, or your penthouse, or your bet. She stepped closer, her voice like glass clear, sharp, fragile, and unbreakable all at once. "You think you're in control. But what you don't know, Lucas, is that I have a plan too." A chill ran down his spine. "What are you talking about?" he asked, suddenly uncertain. Chloe looked at him, eyes blazing, not with rage, but with truth. "Do you remember the name Richards?" Lucas blinked. "Of course. It's your last name." She nodded slowly. "But do you remember the man who owned Richards and Company? A small tech firm you crushed in a merger 5 years ago?" Lucas hesitated. That name stirred something, but it was distant, buried under countless deals. "That was my father's company," she said, voice breaking slightly. "He was a good man, a decent man, until your empire came along and destroyed everything he built. You took over, you stripped it down, and then you walked away richer. He didn't survive it." Lucas felt the blood drain from his face. Chloe's eyes glistened, but no tears fell. "He killed himself, Lucas." After losing everything. After losing hope, Lucas stood frozen. His mind replayed boardroom meetings, legal takeovers, and faceless names. He had destroyed so many he didn't even remember their stories. But Chloe wasn't just a woman he married on a dare. She was the daughter of a man whose life he had shattered. And now, she was the one holding all the pieces. "I married you because I wanted you to feel powerless," Chloe said, stepping back. "To feel like your world could be manipulated too. Like you were no longer the one in charge." Lucas tried to speak, but his throat closed. "You're not the predator this time," she finished. "You're the prey." Then she turned and walked away, leaving Lucas standing alone in his perfectly curated empire built on the ruin of others. For the first time in his life, Lucas Marshall had lost. But it wasn't money, or status, or even the bet. He had lost the one thing he never thought he'd miss: his sense of control. And in its place, a storm of guilt, fear, and a terrifying question that refused to leave his mind. What else had he destroyed without even realizing it? The days after Chloe's revelation passed like shadows, slow, silent, and heavy. Lucas wasn't sleeping, he wasn't eating, he barely spoke. The once confident, razor-sharp millionaire now moved through his penthouse like a man haunted. Haunted by a name he barely remembered, a deal he once saw as just another victory, and the irreversible damage it left behind. Chloe's words echoed in his head constantly. "He killed himself, Lucas. You destroyed my father. You're the prey now." He tried to justify it, to tell himself it wasn't personal. Business was business. The strongest survived. That's how the world worked. But it was personal to her. And now it was becoming personal to him, too. He wanted to talk to her, to apologize, to explain what, deep down, even he didn't fully understand. But every time he tried, Chloe walked past him like he didn't exist. No fury, no shouting, just indifference. And somehow, that was worse than hate. Lucas had faced competitors who wanted to destroy him, but none of them had ever made him feel this small, this exposed, this guilty, until Chloe. And just when he thought it couldn't get worse, it did. One rainy evening, Lucas found Chloe standing alone in the living room, staring out the window as raindrops traced quiet trails down the glass. She didn't turn when he entered. She didn't speak. But something in the air had changed, like she was waiting. He approached cautiously, not wanting to break the fragile silence. "Chloe," he said, his voice low, "I know you don't owe me anything, but I need to understand. Why did you really agree to this?" She stayed quiet for a moment, then finally turned to face him. Her eyes weren't cold this time. They were tired, wounded, but focused. "Because I wanted to see if you were capable of change," she said simply. "Not because I expected it, but because I needed to know." Lucas opened his mouth, but she raised a hand to stop him. "There's something else you don't know," she added. "Something I haven't told you. Something I wasn't sure I'd ever say." He froze, his pulse quickening. Her voice had shifted deeper now, and somehow heavier. "Do you remember the year you took over my father's company?" He nodded slowly. 5 years ago." Chloe took a deep breath. Her lips trembled, but she kept speaking. "I was pregnant." The words landed like a thunderclap. Lucas blinked, unable to process what he'd just heard. "What?" he whispered. Chloe looked down, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. "I was 2 months along. It wasn't planned, but it was mine. And when the company went under, when my father died, I lost everything. I lost him. I lost my home. And the stress, the trauma. I lost the baby, too." Lucas staggered back a step. The ground beneath him felt like it was crumbling. A company, a man, a family, and now a child. "I didn't tell anyone," Chloe continued, "not even my mother. I buried it, moved on. But I never forgot." Lucas's throat tightened. He wanted to speak, to say something, anything. But no words came. Chloe's eyes met his again. "That's what you took from me, Lucas. Not just a company, not just a father. You took a future I never got to live. A child I'll never meet." A silence fell over the room so thick it hurt. Lucas turned away, ashamed to look at her. His voice cracked when he finally spoke. I didn't know." "No," she said softly. "You didn't care to know. You never looked beyond the deal." He covered his face with his hands. He felt sick. For the first time in his life, Lucas Marshall wasn't just guilty of being ruthless. He was guilty of being blind. Blind to lives. Blind to consequences. Blind to humanity. "I can't fix that," he whispered. "No," Chloe said. "You can't." They stood in silence, the rain tapping against the windows like a soft drumbeat of sorrow. Then Chloe added one final blow, not with anger, but with undeniable truth. "This isn't about revenge anymore, Lucas. It's about accountability. You live your life in a tower made of glass and mirrors, but one day, all of it shatters. And now, you're standing in the shards." She walked past him, her steps quiet but final, and disappeared into the hallway. Lucas didn't follow. He couldn't. He stood there alone, surrounded by priceless art, untouched furniture, and floor-to-ceiling windows that reflected a man who no longer recognized himself. The bet was over. The game was over. But the damage? The damage had only just begun. Lucas Marshall had built an empire brick by brick, deal by deal, sacrifice by sacrifice. But now, all he could see was what he had destroyed, not what he had created. Chloe's revelations had gutted him. Her father's death, the child she lost, the quiet pain she carried through every interaction with him. The truth didn't just haunt him, it swallowed him whole. He no longer recognized the man in the mirror. And maybe that was a good thing. For days, Lucas said nothing. He gave Chloe space. She barely acknowledged him, and he respected her silence. It wasn't coldness, it was survival. She had carried more pain than he could fathom, and now that he finally understood the weight of it, he didn't want to trample it with half-hearted apologies. Because words, as he'd come to learn, were cheap. If he was going to change, it wouldn't be with speeches. It would be with action. The next morning, Lucas did something he'd never done before. He shut off his phone, canceled his meetings, ignored his assistant. Instead, he opened an old notebook, one that had sat untouched in his office for years, and began writing down names. Not friends, not allies, not people he could call for favors. He wrote down the names of the companies he had crushed, the small business owners he'd bulldozed, the lives he'd impacted with the belief that it's just business. He started with Chloe's father's company, Richards and Company. Then he went back, and back. By the end of the day, the notebook was filled. Each name was a scar he never knew he carried. And now, he needed to face them. Lucas began reaching out to the people he had hurt, not as Lucas Marshall, the powerful CEO, but as a man who had finally realized the cost of winning at all costs. He met with them face to face, apologized, offered reparations. Not just money, but time, resources, new opportunities. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He asked for a chance to repair what he could. Some slammed the door in his face, some cursed him, but some listened. And slowly, word began to spread. Not of a redemption arc, but of a man trying. Chloe watched it all from afar. She never asked what he was doing during the day, never confronted him when he returned late at night, his eyes tired, his suit wrinkled in a way she'd never seen before. But she noticed the changes. He stopped trying to impress her, stopped buying her things. Instead, he started doing things that mattered, setting her coffee down in the morning just the way she liked it, black, no sugar, replacing her broken umbrella without saying a word, leaving flowers, not roses or luxury bouquets, but sunflowers, her favorite, the kind her father used to bring home after tough days. He didn't ask for a response. He just gave, not out of guilt, but out of something deeper. One night, weeks after she had told him the truth, Chloe found Lucas on the balcony, staring out at the city. She stood beside him for a long time before she spoke. "Why are you doing all this?" Lucas didn't look at her at first. His voice was softer than she'd ever heard it. "Because I was wrong." A pause. "Because I hurt you. Because I destroyed lives I never even saw. Because for the first time in my life, I want to be more than the man I've been." Chloe didn't respond, but she stayed, and that was more than enough for Lucas. The final day of their 6-month agreement came quietly. No lawyers, no drama. Just two people who had once entered into a marriage as strangers, now sitting across from each other at a small kitchen table, both changed in ways neither could have predicted. Lucas took a breath. "I don't want it to end like this," he said, looking at her not as a challenge, but as a woman he respected, admired, and loved. Not because of the bet, Not because I won or lost, but because somewhere along the way, I fell in love with you." Chloe didn't look surprised. She looked ready. She reached across the table, took his hand, and said, "I never wanted revenge, Lucas. I wanted to see if you could become someone worthy of what you took from me." A pause. "And maybe you're on your way." Lucas smiled, tears burning in his eyes. Not because he had earned her forgiveness, but because he was finally earning something far more important, her trust. 6 months ago, Lucas Marshall saw marriage as a business arrangement, a challenge to win, a bet to prove his superiority. Now he stood in the same kitchen where that silent agreement had slowly crumbled, staring at the woman who had taught him that not everything in life came with a price tag. Chloe didn't smile often. She didn't offer her forgiveness wrapped in grand gestures or poetic speeches. She was quiet, grounded, deliberate. But as she looked at Lucas now, really looked at him, something in her had shifted. There was no longer only pain in her eyes. There was possibility. The next few weeks were unfamiliar territory for them both. There were no declarations of eternal love, no honeymoon glow. But there was something deeper: effort. Lucas continued his journey of repair, not just in his business, but in his soul. He began selling off assets connected to the companies he had dismantled, not for profit, but to build community recovery funds. He stepped down from certain boards, appointed new leaders to bring transparency and ethical reform to his corporations. And, most astonishing of all, started a foundation in Chloe's father's name, focused on supporting small businesses and mental health resources for families affected by corporate collapses. And through all of it, Chloe watched, not passively, but silently, searching for signs of sincerity, consistency, and truth. It was never about grand change overnight. It was about lasting change over time. One night, as autumn wrapped the city in its quiet chill, Lucas returned home late. His shoulders were tired, his coat dusted with the first flakes of snow. He found Chloe sitting on the balcony, bundled in a sweater, her fingers curled around a mug of tea. She didn't turn when he approached, but he sat next to her without asking. They watched the lights of New York flicker below like the embers of a distant fire. Chloe spoke first. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I said no to the bet?" Lucas exhaled slowly. "Every day." She smiled, soft, sad. "And what do you think would have happened?" He turned to her, his voice steady. "I never would have known what I was capable of becoming." Chloe looked at him now, no longer guarded, and for the first time, she let him see the weight she'd been carrying slowly slip from her shoulders. Weeks later, something unexpected happened. Chloe felt off. Her mornings were sluggish. She had cravings for things she hadn't touched in years. She chalked it up to stress, then to the season. But eventually, she bought a test. Positive. She sat alone in the bathroom for nearly an hour, staring at the result. Then she cried, not from fear, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming realization that something beautiful could grow from the most broken beginning. When she told Lucas, he didn't say a word at first. He simply stared at her, stunned. Then he laughed. Then he cried. And then he dropped to his knees and whispered, "Thank you." They didn't rush into anything. No dramatic proposals. No remarriage announcement blasted across social media. Instead, Lucas asked a simple question. One night while cooking dinner for Chloe in sweatpants, barefoot in their penthouse kitchen. "Will you marry me again?" He looked nervous this time, not like a man making a deal, but like a man praying for a yes. Chloe tilted her head. For real? Lucas nodded. No bets. No conditions. No power plays. Just love. Just us. Chloe looked at him for a long time, as if flipping through the 6 months of pain, truth, healing, and rediscovery. Then she smiled, a real one this time. Okay, she said, but I'm keeping my job. Lucas laughed. Deal. Their second wedding was nothing like the first. No one was watching. No cameras, no articles. Just a handful of close friends, a garden overlooking the Hudson River, and Chloe in a simple white dress with sunflowers in her hands. As they danced to soft music under the stars, Chloe leaned her head on Lucas's chest and whispered, "You know, I never thought this would be our ending." Lucas kissed her forehead. "It's not the ending," he said. "It's the beginning. From a reckless bet, to devastating truths, to irrevocable loss, to something real, raw, and lasting." Lucas Marshall didn't just fall in love. He fell into humility, into growth, into fatherhood, into redemption. And Chloe? She didn't just forgive. She rebuilt. She chose love, not because it was perfect, but because it was earned. Their story wasn't about revenge. It was about rising from the ashes, together. And just like that, what began as a heartless bet became a life-altering love. Lucas Marshall didn't win the $1 million. He didn't win the game. But what he did win was something worth far more: respect, redemption, a second chance, and the love of a woman who had every reason to destroy him, but instead chose to teach him how to rebuild. And Chloe? She didn't just survive. She didn't just win. She made the world remember something we too often forget: that pain can make you cruel, or it can make you powerful. That forgiveness isn't weakness, it's freedom. And that sometimes the best revenge is making someone become better. So now we ask you, would you have forgiven Lucas? Do you believe people can truly change? What would you have done in Chloe's place? Let us know in the comments. Your voice matters. And if this story moved you, even just a little, please don't forget to like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and subscribe for more stories that shake the soul. Because sometimes the most powerful stories come from the ones that begin with a lie and end with truth.